The late afternoon sun streams through the kitchen curtains, casting golden light across the granite countertop where I'm slicing vegetables for tonight's dinner. The warmth should be comforting, but the knot in my stomach tightens as Karen's perfectly manicured finger runs along the edge of my counter. "Nora, there's dust everywhere." Her voice carries the familiar note of disappointment that's become the soundtrack of my home these past 3 months. I don't know how Mark survives in this disaster. I grip the knife harder, focusing on the steady rhythm of chopping rather than the woman inspecting my kitchen like it's a poorly maintained rental property instead of the home I've lovingly tended for 14 years. Through the window, I catch glimpses of Emma and Jacob racing through the sprinkler, their laughter a sharp contrast to the heaviness settling in my chest. Mark leans against the doorframe, scrolling through his phone, carefully avoiding eye contact. He's perfected this stance, lately physically present but emotionally vacant whenever his mother begins her daily inspection. "The curtains need replacing," Karen adds, tugging at the fabric I hand, selected for its cheerful pattern. "These are so dated." I wonder, briefly, when my mother-in-law's opinions became commands in my own kitchen. How we slid from Karen's visiting for the weekend to Karen's living in our guest room indefinitely without anyone consulting me. 3 months ago, when Frank passed away after 40 years of marriage, Mark had suggested his mother stay just until she finds her footing. She arrived with 4 suitcases for that weekend visit. Her apartment sits empty across town. Yet here she stands, reorganizing my spice rack while criticizing my cooking techniques. "Mom, Nora knows what she's doing." Mark finally interjects, though his voice lacks conviction. He doesn't look up from his phone. "I'm just trying to help," Karen says, the practiced tremble in her voice activating Mark's instinct to soothe her rather than defend me. "Since I lost your father, keeping busy helps me cope." The vegetables blur as I blink back tears of frustration. This morning, like every morning lately, I woke to find my kitchen cabinets rearranged, laundry refolded in a way that communicates my inadequacy, and another family photo mysteriously replaced with one of Karen's choosing. "Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes, I say, forcing brightness into my voice for the children's sake as they tumble in from outside, dripping water onto the floor Karen just criticized. "Grandma!" Jacob rushes forward, leaving puddles in his wake. "Come see the fort we built." "In a minute, sweetie," Karen says, her voice transforming into honeyed warmth. "Let me help your mother first. She's struggling with dinner." "I'm not struggling with dinner. I'm struggling with her." Later, after the children are in bed, I slip into Emma's room to retrieve the history project we've been working on together. Tomorrow's presentation day, and I want to double-check her facts before morning. The folder isn't where she left it on her desk. A frantic search reveals it sitting neatly on her nightstand with noticeable changes handwriting that isn't Emma's has corrected several dates and rewritten entire sections. I noticed Emma's project needed help. Karen explains when I confront her in the hallway, voice low to avoid waking anyone. "The information was wrong. I fixed it." "That wasn't your place," I whisper, clutching the folder. "She worked hard on this. It's her project, not yours." "I'm just trying to help," Karen says, the familiar refrain that deflects all criticism. "You're busy, Nora. The children need someone with time for them." The implication lands like a slap. Before I can respond, Mark emerges from our bedroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" he asks, looking between us. "Your mother rewrote Emma's history project," I say, hoping finally for support. Karen's eyes fill with practiced tears. "I was just trying to help, Mark. The dates were all wrong. I didn't want her embarrassed at school." Mark sighs, running a hand through his hair. "Can we not do this tonight? Mom's just trying to help, Nora. She used to be a teacher, remember?" The betrayal feels physical, a hollowing out of my chest. I retreat to our bedroom without another word, laying Emma's project on my nightstand. Tomorrow I'll help her restore her original work before school. The next morning, I find my grandmother's cherished recipe cards in the kitchen trash, replaced by Karen's more organized system. Something snaps inside me as I rescue the yellowed cards, brushing coffee grounds from my grandmother's handwriting. That afternoon, I sit with Emma at the kitchen table, helping with fractions, when Karen walks in. I feel my daughter's attention shift immediately. "That's not how Mark learned it," Karen says, peering over our shoulders. "Let me show you the proper way, Emma." Emma looks up at her grandmother, then back at me, a flicker of doubt in her eyes that wasn't there before. The first seeds of undermining taking root. That night I write in my journal, how much more am I supposed to endure? The next morning, while Mark showers, I quietly return the family photos to their original places. Karen watches from the hallway, her jaw tightening as I methodically reclaim this small territory. "Those photos are staying where they belong," I say quietly, meeting her gaze without flinching. Mark enters, hair still damp. "What's going on?" Karen's voice trembles with practiced vulnerability. "I was just trying to help, Mark." Mark sighs heavily. "Can't we all just get along?" She's elderly, Nora. She's 64 and runs 5 miles every morning. When Mark turns away, Karen's lips curve into a smirk that disappears so quickly I almost doubt I saw it. Almost. Later, I stand in the bathroom, staring at my reflection while Karen's voice drifts up from downstairs, instructing my children on the right way to build with their Legos. A quiet voice inside me whispers, "This is your home, your family." I reach for my phone, a new determination in my eyes. I'm running late from work, the library having kept me an extra 20 minutes helping a college student with research materials. As I pull into our driveway, the familiar weight settles in my chest. Home doesn't feel like home anymore. The house is quiet when I enter, too quiet for a Thursday afternoon with 2 children. I set my bag down, listening. Karen's voice drifts from the kitchen, the conspiratorial tone she uses when she thinks I'm not around. I pause in the hallway, my hand still on the doorknob. "Your mother doesn't understand what a real family needs," Karen says, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "When I raised Mark, I made sure everything was perfect. Doesn't Mom love us enough?" Jacob's small voice makes my heart crack. 8 years old and already doubting his mother's love because of the poison being poured into his ears. She tries, in her way. Karen sighs dramatically. "Some women just aren't natural mothers." My hands shake with such fury I have to press them against the wall to steady myself. This isn't random criticism anymore. This is calculated destruction. Later that night, I start a new journal, different from my personal one. This one has dates, times, and exact quotes. Evidence. I write with such pressure the pen nearly tears through the page. The 12th of April, 4:15 p.m. Karen told children I don't understand what a real family needs, and implied I don't love them enough. Said I'm not a natural mother. Children present, Emma and Jacob. I flip back through 3 weeks of entries. A pattern emerges. Karen never criticizes when Mark is present. Her commentary is strategic, aimed at undermining me when there are no adult witnesses. The next afternoon, I receive a call from Emma's school principal. "Mrs. Stevens, I wanted to touch base about some concerns that have been raised," Principal Harmon says carefully. "Concerns?" My stomach tightens. Emma's grandmother mentioned some issues at home. She seemed quite worried about Emma's homework supervision and home environment. The fluorescent lights of our kitchen suddenly seem harsh, exposing a truth I've been avoiding. Karen isn't just annoying or grief-stricken, she's dangerous to my family. "Mrs. Harmon," I managed to keep my voice steady, "I appreciate your call. I wasn't aware of any concerns, and I'm Emma's primary homework supervisor. May I ask what specifically was mentioned?" The principal's hesitation speaks volumes. "Mrs. Stevens, this is awkward. Your mother-in-law implied there might be some neglect issues." That evening, when Mark gets home, I try again to make him see. "She went to Emma's school, Mark. She told the principal I'm neglecting our children." Mark sighs, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sure it wasn't like that, Nora. Mom's just concerned about the kids. She told Jacob I don't love him enough. My voice breaks. Your mother is poisoning our children against me, and you're letting it happen. You're being too sensitive. That's just Mom's way, he says. The familiar dismissal that feels like betrayal every time. She raised me and I turned out fine. Did you? I whisper. But he's already walking away. The next day, our neighbor Martha is working in her garden when Karen loudly critiques my flower beds. Nora never could keep up with the weeding, she announces, though the beds are nearly immaculate. Mark deserves a nicer view, poor man. Martha glances up, her eyes narrowing slightly. She says nothing, but I see recognition in her eyes. An hour later, Martha knocks on my door with a thermos of coffee. Thought you might need this, she says, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Once we're seated at the kitchen table, she reaches across and pats my hand. My mother-in-law was just like yours. I see you, dear. The simple acknowledgement brings tears to my eyes. No one believes me, I whisper. I believe you, Martha says firmly. And I'm guessing she's careful about when and where she does it. For the first time in months, I don't feel crazy. That afternoon, I catch Karen going through my desk drawer where I keep financial papers and personal correspondence. What are you doing? I ask, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm just helping organize your mess, she says without apology, not even bothering to close the drawer. When I tell Mark that evening, his response is predictable. She means well, Nora. Don't make this bigger than it is. Later, I overhear Emma telling Jacob, Grandma says Mom can't even keep her papers straight. That's why Dad handles all the money. It's not true we manage our finances together, but the realization hits me like a physical blow. I'm losing my children's respect and my own home. The next morning, I invite Martha for coffee when I know Karen will be holding court in the kitchen. As we sit down, Karen launches into a story about how she single-handedly saved Mark from my chaotic parenting style. Martha smiles sweetly. My mother-in-law used to do the same thing, she says. Always criticizing, always undermining. My Richard finally had to ask her to move out after she convinced our son I was an unfit mother. Karen's face tightens, eyes darting between us. For once, someone else witnesses her true nature. After Martha leaves, I feel less alone. That night, I make a decision. I slip into the living room while everyone sleeps, my heart pounding against my ribs. The small recording device fits perfectly behind a family photo one Karen hasn't yet replaced. My trembling fingers reveal my fear but also my determination. Sometimes the truth needs witnesses, I whisper to myself. The red light blinks steadily as I walk away, a tiny beacon of hope in my occupied home. I've decided to make it official, Karen announces, setting down her fork with a deliberate clink against fine China-me grandmother's, which she insisted on using for Sunday dinner. I'm moving in permanently. The pot roast turns to sawdust in my mouth. Across the table, Emma and Jacob continue eating, unaware of the bomb that's just been dropped in our dining room. Mark and I have discussed it, she continues, patting her lips with a napkin. My house is just too much for me now. I turn to my husband, searching his face for confirmation of this discussion I was never part of. The flicker of surprise in his eyes tells me everything. Mom, we haven't, he begins. Oh, don't be modest, dear. Karen waves her hand dismissively. You were so supportive when I mentioned it last week. I watch the confusion on Mark's face transform into reluctant agreement. It's like witnessing a master puppeteer at work, the slight tilt of her head, the carefully placed tremor in her voice, the practiced vulnerability that turns my husband from confused to compliant in seconds. I just thought we'd talk about it as a family first, he finishes weakly. Karen's eyes meet mine across the candlelight, the triumph in them unmistakable. I hold her gaze steadily, refusing to look away first. Something about my calm reaction seems to unsettle her more than any protest would have. Well, I say, reaching for the salt, that's certainly news. Later that night, After the children are in bed, I sit cross-legged in our closet with my phone propped against a shoebox. The screen shows Karen methodically removing my sweaters from their shelves, skiing at their organization before refolding them her way. This is the third recording this week. I label the video with today's date and add it to my growing digital folder labeled simply Truth. Inside are dozens of files. Karen telling Jacob his mother doesn't understand what boys need. Karen informing Emma that your mother tries in her way. Karen on the phone with her friend Judith, describing me as completely overwhelmed and in over her head. The folder grows heavier with each passing day, like stones collected for some future reckoning. I don't know why you insist on wearing colors that wash you out. Karen's voice carries across the Johnsons' backyard barbecue. Heads turn briefly before neighbors pretend sudden interest in their paper plates. I feel the familiar heat crawling up my neck, but instead of shrinking or changing the subject, I meet her gaze directly. Thank you for your opinion, Karen. My voice is calm, measured. I don't elaborate or defend my coral blouse color Mark once said brings out the warmth in my eyes. I simply acknowledge her words and turn back to my conversation with Martha. Karen blinks rapidly, momentarily thrown by my lack of accommodation. From the corner of my eye, I catch Mark watching the exchange, a slight furrow between his brows. Something shifts in his expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or the first crack in a long-held illusion. The barbecue continues, but Mark's attention keeps drifting our way. When Karen approaches again with a pointed comment about the potato salad I brought, "Store-bought would have been better than this texture, dear," Mark sets down his beer and steps between us. "Mom, that's enough." His voice is soft but firm. Nora worked hard on that salad. Karen's face registers shock before she recovers with a trembling lip. "I was just trying to help her improve. You used to appreciate my honesty, Mark." But instead of backing down, Mark places his hand on my shoulder. Her cooking doesn't need improving, and there's a difference between honesty and criticism. The barbecue chatter dims momentarily as neighbors pretend not to notice the exchange. David Johnson suddenly becomes very interested in adjusting the grill temperature, while his wife Cynthia asks a little too loudly about Jacob's baseball season. Mark's eyes meet mine, an apology in their depths. It's just a moment, just one small stand, but it feels like the first crack in a dam that's been holding back the truth for months. Later, as we load paper plates into the Johnsons' kitchen trash, Martha leans close. "Cynthia and David are coming by tomorrow," she whispers. "They've seen it too. You're not alone in this, Nora." The simple words nearly undo me. Not alone. After months of feeling like I'm losing my mind, the validation is almost too much to bear. True to her word, Martha arrives the next afternoon with Cynthia and David in tow, bearing a casserole and determined expressions. We gather in my kitchen while Karen is at her weekly hair appointment. "She did the same thing to the previous president of the garden club," Cynthia says, her normally quiet voice strengthened by purpose. "Criticized her arrangements until she stepped down. Then Karen took over." David nods, his weathered face serious. "My mother was like her. Always the victim, always the martyr. It doesn't stop unless someone stands up to it." Martha squeezes my hand across the table. "We've all seen how she talks to you, Nora. How she undermines you with the children." Their support wraps around me like a warm blanket, and for the first time in months, I feel my shoulders straighten with something more than determinate community. That evening, my sister Elaine arrives with 2 suitcases and a determined expression. "I'm staying until this is resolved," she announces, brushing past Karen's protests about not having space for guests. "I'm not a guest," Elaine replies, her voice honeyed steel. "I'm family." The children light up at their aunt's arrival, and for the first time in months, genuine laughter echoes through our home. As we prepare dinner together, Elaine whispers, "Lisa called Mark's brother. He says this is exactly what she did to their father for years. Criticized and manipulated until the poor man doubted his own mind. Another piece of the puzzle clicks into place. My phone rings that evening. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Winters. "I got your invitation," she says without preamble. "I'll be there. After what I've seen at the parent conferences." She pauses. "Children deserve to see healthy boundaries modeled, Mrs. Stevens. What you're doing matters." When I hang up, Jacob looks up from his homework. "Mom, is Grandma going to be mad at you forever?" I kneel beside him, this sweet boy with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin. "Grandma isn't mad, honey. She's just used to things being a certain way. Sometimes adults need to learn new ways of treating each other. Like how you said I can't call Billy stupid even when he's wrong?" I smile, running my hand through his hair. Exactly like that. I'm chopping vegetables for dinner when Karen enters the kitchen, her footsteps deliberately heavy to announce her presence. I brace myself for what's coming. "You're cutting those all wrong," she begins, her voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "The nutrients leak out when you chop them that way." Without looking up, I calmly reach for my phone on the counter and press record, turning the screen so she can see the red light blinking. "Please repeat that, Karen. I want to make sure I understand your concern about the vegetables." She freezes, mouth half open, eyes fixed on the phone. For the first time since she arrived with her 4 suitcases for the weekend, I see something new in her expression. Uncertainty. "Tu is just trying to help," she stammers, the practiced confidence suddenly absent. "I know." I smile placidly. "And I want to make sure I get your help exactly right." She backs out of the kitchen without another word, and I save the brief recording. A small victory, but significant. The balance has shifted, just slightly. That night, I find Mark sitting on our bed, staring at his hands, his shoulders curve forward, making him look smaller than his 6-foot frame. "I heard what she said to you," he says without looking up. "About not deserving this family." The words hang between us. I'd been in the garden when Karen approached, unaware that Mark was on the patio within earshot. "I've been so afraid of losing my mother that I couldn't see I was losing my wife," he continues, his voice cracking on the final word. I sit beside him, the mattress dipping under our combined weight. For a long moment, neither of us speaks. There's too much to say, and the words feel inadequate after months of silence. "I miss us," I finally whisper. His hand finds mine, warm and solid. Not a solution, but a beginning. The next morning I send out invitations for a family dinner. Martha and her husband, Mark's brother Lisa and his wife, my sister Elaine, the children's teacher Mrs. Winters, who has witnessed Karen's helpful interference at school, Pastor Williams, whose kind eyes see more than he lets on. I include a brief note. For support and truth. Saturday at 6. As I seal the last envelope, Karen appears in the doorway of my small home office, one of my opened invitations in her hand. "What exactly are you planning?" Her voice is sharp, suspicious. I meet her gaze without flinching. "A family meeting about truth." Fear flickers across her face, quickly masked by indignation. "Mark won't choose you over me," she says, her voice hardening. "He never has." "This isn't about choices." I continue addressing envelopes, my handwriting steady and clear. "It's about consequences." She stands in the doorway a moment longer, then turns away. I hear her on the phone shortly after, her voice urgent as she speaks to someone about Nora's disturbing behavior and concerns about her stability. I slide the sealed invitations into my purse, a strange calm settling over me. The red recording light on my phone blinks steadily, capturing every word of her frantic call. Truth needs witnesses, and on Saturday it will have them. The dining room glows amber under the chandelier Mark installed for our 10th anniversary. Crystal glasses catch the light, throwing prisms across the walls. I've set the table with our wedding china, rarely used but perfect for tonight. The careful arrangement of each fork, each knife control in small things when larger matters feel so precarious. "You've made quite a production of this dinner," Karen says, leaning against the doorframe. Her voice carries that note of dismissal I've come to recognize so well, though I can't imagine why Martha and the Williamsons needed to be included in a family discussion. I smooth the tablecloth, erasing an invisible wrinkle. It's not just family joining us. Emma's teacher will be here too. Karen's fingers tighten around her glass of water. Mrs. Abernathy, why on earth would you invite her? I look up, meeting her gaze directly. She had some concerns she wanted to discuss. I don't elaborate, don't explain that Mrs. Abernathy called after Karen showed up at school to explain why Emma's science project was below her potential. I'm not feeling well, Karen announces suddenly. I think I'll need to excuse myself from dinner. That's unfortunate, I say, continuing to arrange fresh flowers in the centerpiece. Everyone's looking forward to seeing you. The doorbell chimes, and Karen's face tightens. She disappears upstairs, and I hear her urgent whispers through the heating vent calling Mark at work, no doubt. The words humiliate and ungrateful drift up from the floorboards. Martha arrives first, bearing a bottle of wine and knowing eyes. I brought reinforcements, she whispers, squeezing my arm. Both kinds. One by one they file in, Mark's brother David and his wife Jen, the Williamsons from next door, Mrs. Abernathy with her gray hair in a neat bun, Pastor Williams with his gentle smile. Each person who has witnessed Karen's behavior in some form small cruelties accumulated like interest on a debt long overdue. Mark arrives home to find the house full of guests. His eyes dart from face to face, confusion evident in the furrow between his brows. What's all this? He asks quietly when he finds me in the kitchen. Truth, I answer simply, handing him a glass of water. His eyes search mine. Mom called me at work, said you were trying to humiliate her. The question hangs unspoken between us. Not humiliate, I correct gently. Expose. The sound of Karen's heels on the stairs announces her entrance. She's changed into a blue dress I've never seen, her hair freshly styled, lipstick perfect. The grieving widow transformation complete. I decided I simply couldn't miss this lovely gathering, she announces. Her smile stretches tight across her face, though I'm still feeling rather faint. Dinner begins with careful conversation weather, community events, the children's activities. Karen relaxes incrementally, believing the danger has passed. By the time I serve the pot roaster favorite, intentionally she's holding court about her volunteer work at church. It's so important to give back, she's saying when I return from the kitchen with an extra serving dish, especially when families are struggling with proper guidance. I place the dish carefully on the table. Speaking of guidance, Karen, there's something I'd like to understand. The room quiets. Forks pause mid-air. The sudden silence amplifies the soft clink of ice against crystal as Karen takes a deliberate sip of water. You've been making some concerning comments about our family, I continue, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I wonder if you'd be willing to explain them to everyone here. Karen's laugh tinkles like breaking glass. I have no idea what you're talking about, Nora. Perhaps you're confused. Her eyes dart around the table, seeking allies and finding none. The confidence in her posture falters for just a moment before she straightens her shoulders. This dinner was supposed to be about family unity, she says, voice rising with practiced distress. And instead, Nora has turned it into some sort of interrogation. She's been recording me, invading my privacy. The accusation hangs in the air. I wait, letting the silence work for me rather than against me. Karen's throat bobs as she swallows, unprepared for my calm in the face of her storm. Actually, Martha interjects, her southern accent thickening with purpose. I heard you at the garden club last week. You said Nora was, and I quote, playing at being a mother without having the proper instincts for it. Karen's face drains of color. I never. You told me Emma was falling behind because of insufficient attention at home, Mrs. Abernathy adds quietly, which is simply not true. Emma is thriving. Karen stands abruptly. This is an ambush, Mark. Are you going to allow this? All eyes turn to Mark, who sits staring at his plate, knuckles white around his fork. Is it true, Mom? He asks, voice barely audible. Of course not. Karen scoffs. They're twisting my words. I stand and retrieve my laptop from the sideboard. I think we should be clear about exactly what words were said. Karen's eyes widen with genuine fear for the first time. You didn't. I did. I open the laptop, turn it toward the table. I recorded your conversations when I wasn't home. That's illegal, Karen sputters. Not in Pennsylvania, with single-party consent for electronic recordings in your own home, David says. My brother-in-law, the attorney, nods at me. And given what you've been saying to my niece and nephew, I fully support Nora's decision. I press play, and Karen's voice fills the dining room. Your mother doesn't understand what a real family needs. She tries in her way, but some women just aren't meant to be mothers. Jacob's small voice follows. Doesn't Mom love us enough? Karen bolts for the door, but finds Mark standing in her path, his face a stone wall of realization. I think we should hear all of it, Mom, he says, his voice thick with emotion. I need to hear it. David clears his throat. She did the same thing to Dad, Mark. Remember how she'd tell him he couldn't manage without her? How she'd rearrange his study when he was at work, throw away things she decided weren't important. That was different, Karen hisses. It wasn't, David counters quietly. It's why I moved 3 states away. I connect my phone to our television screen, the harsh electronic blue casting shadows across Karen's suddenly pale face. There's more, I say, pressing play again. Karen's voice fills the room, crystal clear. Mark has always been too weak to make good decisions. It's why he needs me. Without me, this family would fall apart within weeks. Nora doesn't have what it takes to hold things together. Karen's mask slips completely. Her face contorts with a rage I've glimpsed only in fragments. You ungrateful, pathetic excuse for a son. After everything I've done. She stops, suddenly aware of her audience. The performance crumbles in real time. The carefully constructed facade of the doting mother-in-law and grandmother replaced by the woman I've known was there all along. Her hands tremble as she grips the back of a dining chair, knuckles white against the dark wood. The silence that follows feels like the aftermath of thunder, a heavy electricity lingering in the air. No one speaks as Karen retreats upstairs, the slam of the guest room door reverberating through the house. One by one, our guests speak quietly with me, offering support, confirmation, solidarity. Pastor Williams places a weathered hand on my shoulder. Boundaries are biblical, Nora. Never doubt that. Later, I find Mark sitting alone in the dark living room, head in his hands. I settle beside him, our shoulders barely touching. Tomorrow will be different, I say quietly. Above us, the unmistakable sound of a suitcase being dragged from the closet echoes through the ceiling. Mark reaches for my hand, and for the first time in months, I don't pull away. The morning light streams through our bedroom curtains, harsh and revealing after last night's dinner party exposures. I've barely slept, listening to Karen's movements in the guest room drawers opening and closing, the muffled sound of phone conversations well past midnight. My body feels hollowed out, as if I've survived some natural disaster and am surveying what remains. Mark sits on the edge of our bed, tying his shoes with mechanical precision. She's been up all night calling people. His voice carries an unfamiliar edge. Pastor Williams, my cousins, even my boss. I know. I slide my grandmother's silver locket around my neck, the one Karen once suggested I update with something more modern. Today, its weight against my skin feels like armor. From downstairs comes the sound of Karen's voice, the affected tremor perfected over decades. I catch fragments. Terrible misunderstanding, and at my age. And my poor son. Mark meets my eyes in the mirror. She's packing. Not leaving, I correct him. Positioning. The kitchen falls silent as we enter. Karen stands by the counter, suitcase positioned dramatically by the door, tissues clutched in one perfectly manicured hand. Her eyes are red-rimmed but dry. The performance is flawless. I can see I'm not wanted here. Her voice cracks on cue. My own son turning against me. Mark stiffens beside me, but doesn't rush to comfort her as he would have yesterday. The air between them has changed, charged with his new awareness. I have nowhere to go. Karen glances toward her suitcase. At my age, she reaches for her phone. I'll just call Pastor Williams about that senior housing he mentioned. I recognize the script, the crisis, the helplessness, the solution that requires Mark to rescue her. I've watched this play performed countless times, always with the same ending. Mark consoling, apologizing, surrendering. But today, Mark simply says, "Mom, please sit down, we need to talk." Karen's fingers freeze mid-dial, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly before the mask of vulnerability slides back into place. "Of course, dear, whatever you need." "Not just me." Mark's voice holds steady. "All of us. Family meeting in 10 minutes. Her gaze snaps to me, calculating. "I should freshen up first." 10 minutes, I repeat, the steady rhythm of my heart surprising me with its calmness. We'll be in the living room. Upstairs, I hear Emma and Jacob stirring. I climb the stairs, tapping gently on their doors. "Time to get up. We're having a family meeting downstairs." Emma appears, hair tousled, eyes wary. "Is Grandma leaving?" "We're going to talk about some changes," I say carefully. "All of us together." Jacob peeks around his door. "Is Grandma still mad about the recordings?" I kneel to his level. Grandma is feeling lots of things right now, but today isn't about her feelings. It's about our family and what we need to be happy and healthy. They follow me downstairs where Mark has arranged the furniture our family on one side of the room, a single chair across from us. The visual statement isn't subtle, but it's necessary. The united front wasn't my suggestion, but Mark's, a physical representation of the shift in our household. Karen enters precisely 10 minutes later, face freshly powdered, clothes impeccably pressed. Her practiced smile falters when she sees the arrangement. She hovers uncertainly before taking the single chair. "What's this about?" Her voice wavers between indignation and concern. I feel Mark take a breath beside me, but to my surprise, it's Emma who speaks first. "We made some rules, Grandma." Karen's head snaps toward my daughter, clearly not expecting this front. I place the folder containing printouts of texts, emails, and transcriptions from recordings in the coffee table between us. The evidence we've gathered exists in multiple places now, with Martha, with my sister, with Mark's brother, with Pastor Williams. "We've made some decisions as a family," I say, my voice steadier than I thought possible. "You have 3 options, Karen." Her spine straightens, the victim posture vanishing as she realizes the script has changed. "Options?" The word comes out sharp despite her attempt to soften it. "You can return to your own home with scheduled, respectful visits." I hold up one finger, then another. "You can move into the senior community Pastor Williams suggested." A third finger. "Or you can stay here, but with new boundaries that will be respected." Karen's mouth opens, the familiar storm of objections gathering, but I raise my hand. "Before you answer, you should know everything has been documented." I tap the folder. The church board, family members, neighbors, they've all received edited highlights of your behavior. Her face pales beneath the makeup. "Your choice now determines what else they need to see." The room falls silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock Karen once insisted we move to create better flow. Its rhythm measures the seconds as Karen's face cycles through emotions, disbelief, calculation, anger, and finally the realization that her usual tactics have lost their power. Mark leans forward. "Mom, I love you, but this stops now." "The way you talk about our mom isn't nice," Jacob adds, his small voice steady. "And you keep changing my homework," Emma says. "My teacher noticed." Karen's hands clutch her purse so tightly her knuckles whiten. Fine, she says finally. I'll go back to my house, since I'm clearly not appreciated here. We'll help you move tomorrow, I say before she can dictate terms. Visits will resume in 1 month. A month? Karen's voice rises. Those visits will end immediately if the behavior returns. I continue calmly. The finality in my tone silences her. For perhaps the first time in her life, Karen Stevens has no ready response. Mark's brother arrives an hour later to help with Karen's things. As they load the car, I feel neither triumph nor guilt, but a quiet certainty that we've done what was necessary. Mark turns to me in the driveway after Karen leaves. I should have seen it years ago, I'm sorry. The children wrap their arms around my waist, forming a circle that feels like healing beginning. Only later, clearing dishes from lunch, do I notice the folded paper on the kitchen counter. Karen's handwriting, elegant and precise. This isn't over. I crumple the note, dropping it into the trash with the day's other discards. Yes, it is. The November sun spills across our backyard, painting the fallen leaves in amber and gold. From my spot on the porch, I watch Mark tending the grill while Emma and Jacob help arrange the Thanksgiving table settings. There's an ease to their movements, a natural rhythm that had disappeared during those dark months with Karen. 6 months. Half a year since she moved back to her own home with clear boundaries in place. The transformation feels almost miraculous. Need a refill? Martha appears beside me with a steaming pot of coffee. Thanks. I hold out my mug, breathing in the rich aroma. Hard to believe where we were this time last year. Martha settles into the chair beside me. You fought for what mattered, Nora. Not many have that courage. Inside, the dining room glows with traditional Thanksgiving warmth, the rich burgundy tablecloth, golden candles, and the centerpiece Emma crafted at school. Through the window, I catch sight of Karen arranging the dessert she brought precisely according to the boundaries we established. She's allowed to contribute, but not take over. She can visit, but not dictate. She can love her grandchildren, but not undermine their mother. The doorbell chimes, and I rise to welcome Mark's brother and his family. The house fills with genuine laughter, not the tense, walking on eggshells kind that had become our norm, but the authentic joy of people who feel safe with each other. Nora. Karen's voice behind me carries that familiar note of criticism. The tablecloth has a stain near the corner. I turn, meeting her eyes directly. The silence between us speaks volumes. She remembers our agreement, sees my unwavering gaze, and something shifts in her expression. I brought a lovely fall centerpiece that might draw attention away from it, she amends, her tone softening. Thank you, Karen. I'll consider it. My voice remains warm but firm. Emma appears at my side, 12 going on 20 in her quiet confidence. Grandma, I already made a centerpiece for the table. Would you like to see it? I catch the flash of irritation in Karen's eyes, quickly masked with a smile. 6 months ago, this interaction would have ended with Emma doubting her creation and me fuming in silence. Now my daughter stands tall, secure in her contribution. Of course, darling. Karen follows Emma, her centerpiece still clutched in her hands. Jacob bounces in from the backyard, cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Mom, Dad's letting me flip the burgers. Wonderful. I tousle his hair. Just be careful near the flame. I know. He rolls his eyes. The gesture so perfectly 8-year-old that I laugh. We talked about fire safety in therapy, remember? The children's counseling sessions were Mark's idea, one of many healthy decisions he's made since we established boundaries with his mother. Safety isn't just about fire, he'd said. It's about them feeling secure in their own home. In the kitchen, I find Mark's brother Dan organizing drinks. The kids seem great, he says quietly. A lot different from last Thanksgiving. Last Thanksgiving, when Karen criticized every dish, rearranged my table settings, and told Emma her handmade place cards were sweet but amateurish. When Jacob asked why Grandma was always mad at Mommy. When Mark had stood silent, caught between wife and mother. Counseling has helped. I arranged glasses on a tray. All of us needed to process what happened. I should have spoken up sooner, Dan admits. Mom did the same thing to Dad all those years. Before I can respond, Mark calls everyone to the table. The meal unfolds with an ease that still surprises me after years of tension. When Karen begins to comment on my stuffing recipe, Mark catches her eye and she smoothly pivots to discussing the weather. The subtle exchange happens without drama, just the quiet enforcement of boundaries we've all learned to maintain. After dessert, Emma pulls out the family album she's been working on for a school project. It's about family traditions, she explains, flipping pages that show holidays, birthdays, ordinary moments captured in photographs. That's not how we did Thanksgiving when Mark was little, Karen begins, the familiar criticism creeping back. In our family. This is how we do it in our family now, Grandma, Emma says with gentle confidence. I'm showing our traditions. Karen blinks, startled by this new Emma who speaks her mind without fear. I see the moment she decides not to push, the careful recalibration. Well, families evolve, don't they? She offers, glancing at me. I nod, allowing this moment of grace between us. Later, after Jacob insists on showing Karen his science project, no longer seeking her approval but confidently sharing his accomplishment, guests begin to depart. Mark walks his mother to her car, their conversation low and private in the driveway. In the quiet aftermath, I find myself in our bedroom, drawn to the bottom dresser drawer where I'd tucked away my journal from those dark months. The leather cover feels weathered under my fingers as I open it, scanning entries that chronicle a pain that now feels distant but instructive. The last entry, written the night before our family confrontation, how much more am I supposed to endure? I close the journal, feeling the weight of that question and the journey to its answer. Not simply an ending, but a transformation. That evening, after the children are asleep, Mark and I sit on the porch swing, sharing the comfortable silence we've rediscovered through months of counseling. Mom actually thanked me today, he says, his hand finding mine in the darkness, for setting boundaries with her. Can you believe it? What did she say exactly? That she never realized how much her helping was hurting us. He sighs. I don't know if she really understands, but at least she's trying. The swing creaks gently beneath us, a soothing rhythm. My thoughts drift to the support group I started at church 3 months ago. 6 women, all navigating difficult family relationships, all finding their voices after years of silence. Your group has another new member? Mark asks. 2, actually. Martha's sister and someone from Jacob's school. I lean into his shoulder. It helps, sharing what we learned the hard way. Do you think she's changed? Mark asks suddenly, gazing toward his mother's departing headlights. I consider this, watching the last light fade from the horizon. No, I finally answer, but we have. Mark nods slowly. That's the real victory, isn't it? Not changing her, but changing how we respond to her. Inside, the phone rings. Mark tenses, slight old habits die hard, but I remain relaxed. Probably your mother calling to thank us for dinner, I say without concern. And if she starts in about how you overcooked the turkey? I smile into the gathering darkness. Then I'll thank her for her opinion and change the subject. Some battles aren't worth fighting anymore. The peace we've found isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of wisdom. Karen hasn't changed her nature, but she's learned to operate within our boundaries. We've stopped expecting her to become someone she's not, and instead created the family environment we want despite her limitations. As we rock gently under the first emerging stars, I realize the true gift of this journey. Not just reclaiming our home, but rediscovering ourselves in the process.